You think you know Queen Elizabeth II, the longest reigning monarch, the face on every coin and stamp, the woman in her jewel-toned suits and perfectly matched hats. But behind the crown was a queen who was, at heart, delightfully human. She wasn't just regal, she was relatable, funny, and even a little bit quirky.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister of Canada, for making me feel so old.
From sneaking dogs on her honeymoon to having a sweet tooth for jelly made in her own garden, Queen Elizabeth had moments that made her not only admired, but utterly adorable. Today, we're uncovering 10 charming facts about Her Majesty that will make you see her in a whole new light. Stay with us, because by the end, you might just find yourself smiling at the Queen, who knew how to balance majesty with mischief. Number 10. The Queen's Royal Corgi Kingdom. For Queen Elizabeth, dogs weren't pets, they were family. Her love affair with corgis began when she was just a child and received her very first one, named Dookie. But it was Susan, a corgi gifted to her at age 18, who became the matriarch of the royal pack. Susan was so beloved that she even joined the Queen and Prince Philip on their honeymoon, smuggled along despite Philip's protests. Over the years, every corgi the Queen owned was a direct descendant of Susan, more than 30 in total. They had their own room at Buckingham Palace, complete with gourmet meals and even monogrammed beds. To the world, she was a monarch. To her dogs, she was simply Mummy. And in those wagging tails and cheerful barks, she found her daily dose of joy. Number 9. The invention of the Dorgie. As if corgis weren't enough, the Queen managed to invent her very own breed. One of her corgis once mated with Princess Margaret's dachshund, and the result was an adorable hybrid called the Dorgie. Short legs, long bodies, and a playful spirit, they quickly became part of palace life. The Queen adored them just as much as her corgis, proving that when it came to dogs, she wasn't picky about pedigree. She simply loved them for who they were. Imagine a queen surrounded by a pack of tiny corgis and even tinier dorgis scampering across Buckingham Palace floors. It's enough to melt even the stiffest upper lip. Number 8. A pony named Peggy. Her lifelong love of animals started early. When Elizabeth was just 4 years old, her grandfather, King George V, gifted her a Shetland pony named Peggy. From that moment on, she was hooked. By age 6, she was riding confidently, and by adulthood, she was a seasoned equestrian. Horses became her great passion, one that outlasted even her marriage and her reign. Peggy wasn't just a gift, she was the spark that lit a fire in the young princess's heart. And it's no wonder that decades later, well into her 90s, Elizabeth could still be seen out riding, often without a helmet. For her, the saddle was not just a pastime, it was freedom. Number 7. Riding into her 90s. Most of us slow down with age, but Queen Elizabeth, she just tightened her reins. Well into her 90s, she was still seen riding her beloved ponies around Windsor. In tweed skirts, silk scarves, and with perfect posture, she looked more like a countryside grandmother than the sovereign ruler of the Commonwealth. She refused to wear a helmet, because of course helmets weren't very queenly. It was more than just a hobby. Riding gave her peace, a connection to nature, and a reminder of simpler times. In those quiet rides, she wasn't the Queen of England. She was just Elizabeth, the little girl who had once climbed onto Peggy's back. Number 6. Granny's tiara. When you think of a queen's jewels, you imagine the largest diamonds, the rarest pearls, and the grandest crowns. But Queen Elizabeth's favourite wasn't the most dazzling. It was the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, lovingly nicknamed Granny's tiara. Passed down from her grandmother Queen Mary, this delicate diamond piece held deep sentimental value. She wore it more than any other tiara, and you've likely seen it many times, on coins, stamps, and banknotes across the world. For Elizabeth, it wasn't about sparkle, it was about family. Each time she wore it, she carried a reminder of her roots, her heritage, and the grandmother who helped shape her. Sometimes the most precious jewels are those that shine with memory. Number 5. A taste for quince jelly. Amid all the pomp of state banquets and elaborate palace kitchens, Queen Elizabeth's culinary comfort was surprisingly humble. She adored quince jelly, especially when made from quinces grown in her very own garden. Each year, jars would be prepared and sent with her wherever she travelled, so that tea time felt like home. Imagine being one of the most powerful women in the world and still wanting that familiar taste of homemade jelly on your toast. It's an image both sweet and grounding. Behind the diamond brooches and state dinners, there was a grandmotherly figure who simply loved a dollop of jelly with her afternoon tea. Number 4. One nail polish. Forever. For decades, Queen Elizabeth kept her nails painted in just one colour: Essie's ballet slippers. A soft, pale pink, it was understated, classic, and quietly elegant. She first wore it in 1989, and from then on, it was her signature shade. While trends came and went, bright reds, edgy blacks, even sparkles, the Queen remained loyal. It was subtle, almost invisible, but deeply telling. Elizabeth understood that true style isn't about chasing fashion. It's about knowing who you are and sticking with it. And perhaps, in her pale pink fingertips, there was a hint of the young woman she once was. Simple, constant, and quietly confident. Number 3. Her very own ATM machine. This fact is as quirky as it is adorable. While she usually didn't carry cash, the Queen did have her very own private ATM installed in Buckingham Palace, courtesy of Coutts Bank. Did she ever use it? No one really knows. But it was there, just in case Her Majesty needed some quick pocket money before church. Pair that with her travelling quince jelly, and you get a wonderfully human picture. A queen who wanted both her comforts and her conveniences within reach. After all, even monarchs like to be prepared. Number 2. Paying the poet in sherry. Every monarch has a poet laureate, tasked with writing verses to commemorate royal events. But under Elizabeth, the tradition came with a twist. The poet wasn't paid in cash, but in sherry. 720 bottles over 10 years to be precise. That's a bottle every 5 days. It's whimsical, a little eccentric, and very much in keeping with the Queen's quiet appreciation for old traditions. She didn't need the poetry to flatter her. She valued the art itself, the storytelling, the music of words woven into history. And perhaps she liked knowing that somewhere out there, a poet was toasting her health with a glass of sherry. Number 1. The purse that spoke volumes. If you ever watched Queen Elizabeth at an event, you might have noticed her ever-present handbag, but that bag wasn't just an accessory. It was a secret language. If she switched it to her other arm, it was a signal to staff. Time to wrap things up. If she placed it on the table, the event was drawing to a close, and if she dropped it to the floor, it was code for urgent help. Sometimes, she even twisted her wedding ring to indicate she wanted to be rescued from a dull conversation. With just a tilt of her hand or a shift of her purse, she orchestrated entire rooms without ever raising her voice. It was discreet, dignified, and, dare we say, delightfully clever. The purse wasn't just a handbag. It was her royal walkie-talkie. So what do these 10 charming facts tell us? That Queen Elizabeth II, though often portrayed as distant or untouchable, was, in truth, full of warmth, humour, and a touch of whimsy. She loved her dog so much she invented a breed. She carried jelly across continents. She wore her grandmother's tiara, not because it glittered the most, but because it meant the most. And she used her purse not just for lipstick, but as a secret code. In every one of these details, she was reminding us that true power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it wags its tail. And sometimes it's as simple as a jar of jelly on toast. That's the Queen we'll always remember. Not just the sovereign, but the woman who ruled with grace, charm, and a dash of adorableness.